Hello, you are listening to the Gamer Librarian Podcast, the best podcast you can find on this side of the multiverse. I am your host, Adrian, and today I will be talking about the Museum of the Moving Image, the Kama Sutra, and more. Afterwards, be sure to subscribe to be notified when future episodes are released and show your support by liking and leaving a comment. Thank you for joining. So, here we are, the last Monday of January 2025. We're moving into this year pretty fast, it feels. It feels like every year goes by quicker and quicker the older I get. And we're already starting the era of video game announcements, which is crazy. So we have a lot to talk about later today. But, I want to talk about a little bit of what I've been doing over the weekend and stuff, just some little brief catch up for anybody who really cares. Because not for nothing, but I do actually go out and touch grass and breathe fresh air and go outside and get some sun on me. So it's very not very often that I get to go out and talk about my experiences in the world. But over the weekend, I went over to New York City to visit the Moving Image Museum over in Queens. And this is like a museum more centered around the history and like the impact of photography and film, right? They have very early first edition like cameras from, the 1800s, 1880s, and how that impact of film and turning into like from pictures to motion pictures has just impacted our culture and what we got out of that. I think that's very impactful to our culture. Video games are very the same. They even had video games like set up there, old arcade games. They had, Pong Station, Donkey Kong, and NBA Jam, and a whole host of other ones, which is, awesome because that's just where we get video games from. If it wasn't for film and cameras and like digital computers, we wouldn't have the video game stuff that we would have today. Like it just wouldn't be the same. So I think that impact is like still there that you can see that in the gaming industry, which is pretty cool. They had some really awesome stuff just there in terms of like cameras and televisions and stuff there to look at, which was awesome. They had like these little stations where you can use this crank and you go into like this goggle visor thing and you can see like a flip book, like a motion flip book from like the 1800s, like the first ever ones, which is crazy. So that was pretty cool, pretty awesome. They had two other exhibits still around the like the film industry kind of stuff. The first one is the Muppets. Muppets are a very huge thing since like the 60s. It was a Jim Henson exhibit, so they had a bunch of stuff from him and his legacy, his family, and his corporation worked with the museum and they put the exhibit together. That's some awesome stuff. Hannah was so happy to be there, which was great. We got some good pictures with some of the like more authentic versions of the Muppets. I don't know if they're the original ones, the first ones. I can't really say remember what they said on the plaques, but they're definitely ones that were used on the show, which is pretty cool. Sesame Street was also featured there, right? So that's pretty much the same thing. The Muppets and Sesame Street, like the big puppet stuff, which is great. And then the other exhibit was skateboarding, more on like the filming side of skateboarding. They had like skateboards and stuff, and some stuff about the companies like Girl and Plan B and stuff, which is great. But it was mostly like an homage to how skating kind of really began becoming bigger because of the film versions of it. You got the VHSs and the DVDs and the movies and stuff, all those promotional material, people making those awesome like trick videos, or there's skating montage stuff, or even like some small tournament or like just little skating competition stuff way back in the day from the 90s is crazy. I wasn't around then, born 98, so I missed that kind of stuff. I had this brief skating period in like school, not since like my adult years. I don't really skateboard that much, but it was definitely really awesome being able to see that and have that kind of culture just be cemented into history in a museum. I really liked that. That was really great. They had like some of the film footage playing on a big projector so you can watch some of it, and it's like all that just feels really awesome to be able to experience. I think museums like that are really great. I did not see a version of Lords of Dogtown or anything about the Zephyr Boys or anything like that. That's the only thing I know about skating culture is like those movies were what I grew up watching as like the first skating videos and stuff that I watched. And I was just really looking forward to seeing something about Lords of Dogtown. But it seemed like that. I think Stacy Peralta was mentioned in his company plaque that they had up. I don't remember what the name of it was, but I remember seeing his name, which is cool. It's very cool. And yeah, the moving image is really great. I think everybody should go out and check. Tickets aren't very expensive. They're like 20, 25 bucks. And they have a whole bunch of other amenities and stuff, which is like film screenings and all kinds of really dope stuff. And Astoria, which is where it is in Queens, is a lovely place. They have some really cool restaurants and places to go. I never had an Uno's before, but I tried Uno's. I know it's like a chain, but that was pretty fun. I didn't mind it. They had pretty good pizza. I would only recommend going to New York in the summertime. The winter is a little meh. The weather was pretty nice for us, but it can get, windy and chilly pretty quick. And I would much rather be in like moderate temperatures than having to be, outside like that. I'm usually a cold guy, but my old age has made me a lot more susceptible to the cold, which is pretty terrible. I feel like a wimp now because of that. I'm always bundled up now. I used to go out in like just jeans, shorts even, and just a sweatshirt, but now it's like even a sweatshirt doesn't even cover me anymore. It's like too much. I gotta get like an overcoat. And that's enough about New York City, but I've been gearing up for this episode of the podcast for quite a while because I just think it's funny. I never thought the podcast would last this long. I kind of thought I would give up, and because we're here now, I just think we should play into it. I think it's funny, goofy, haha, just for the sake of it, but I've always wanted to read this book, and this book is the Kama Sutra by Vachiyana. I'm sure I butchered how it's actually pronounced, but so this is the first like book that I read for the year, and I think it's kind of fun to try and read books that aren't just fiction with fictional characters and fictional worlds, books that kind of are us trying to understand each other. And I guess you can call this like a philosophical book to like the broader side of it if you don't want to get too into the nitty-gritty of its topics. But it's definitely about, being a person and having a relationship with other people and how you have to interact with that. I think that's like the broadest aspect of it. The Kama Sutra has always been, I think, the book about like, oh, it's the sex book. People use it for like sex and the sex positions, and I think that's is there, but it's definitely not the majority of it. A majority of it is like a perspective on how people in certain positions in relationships should, act and behave, especially when it comes to like, whether or not you're already someone who's experienced in dating or you're not. I think that's a very big distinction that the book, tries to define. And it's very old. It's thousands of years old, this book, and it's been translated, narrated, and analyzed by a lot more smarter and skilled people than me. I'm just the dude who read a version of the PDF of it online because I didn't want to one go to a library and get a copy or pay for it. I just didn't want to do that. So I found a few versions online. I read through them, and this seems the version I read seemed like the most accurate to in English translation. And I'm not really going to go and find one that was more modern, but this is what it is. Now, I would not say that everything in this book should be taken as the advice to take. I think we are in a different time now. Human beings have a different perspective on relationships, and we are in very different like social and economic like there's such different culture now that a lot of the ideas in this book can't be taken seriously. So I definitely wouldn't, but I definitely think a lot of it is, valid and has some true merit. I think there's a lot of common sense that comes to being an adult and having relationships. And I think that once you're acclimated in the world, you understand that enough. I think you can learn that just on your own. You don't need a book to tell you that. But I think this book kind of does allow a little more in depth into the paradigms of like relationships, which is pretty cool. The relationships are very different, right? That's a caste system from like hundreds of thousands of years ago or whatever. We don't need to talk about that. We're talking about people who are just individuals and they're trying to interact with each other and then express their feelings and have connections with one another. That's as broad as you can make it, and I think that's pretty fair for a book that's 2,000 years old or so, which is wild. Now, I don't really want to get into like quoting or anything like that because it's a book about translation and I'm not really going to get into nitty gritty of what the meanings is. But a lot of it, I think, is true common sense. You shouldn't take all of it with like its true absolutity. But I think some of it does have merit. You can practice it in your daily life. You can, work on it with your partner in ways that could be fulfilling, beneficial for your relationship. That is pretty awesome. Now, I'll say that I read the book. I didn't like study it. I read it from cover to cover and I didn't do anything else. I didn't like take notes or anything. I did practice a little bit of some of the stuff just to see if like it did work. Some of it did have some practicality in it and it did have some benefit, which is pretty nice. So, Valentine's Day is coming up soon. So I think that maybe something like this could be beneficial for people. I was looking out for sponsors and stuff, but I'm pretty lazy and I don't really guarantee that things will, work my way. So I don't really work up to it. But maybe in the future I'll try a little more. I was going to try to work for a sponsor for this cool themed episode or whatever it is. It's definitely crazy talking about this topic. So, it is episode 69. So it's crazy that we're here saying that. It's just funny making a sex joke here on like themed episode for YouTube. It's just very odd for me. And that's it for the Kama Sutra, I would say. I think that if you're interested in doing it, you'll do it. You'll give it a try, you'll read it. But if not, just know that there's definitely other ways to maybe improve your relationship than doing a lot of other stuff, which is crazy. Maybe you just don't know a lot of the intricacies with your partner, or communication is definitely not where it should be. It's definitely weird. I would say that maybe the Kama Sutra is like the Prince's Machiavelli, right? The Prince by Machiavelli. If you ever read that, that's kind of like The Art of War by Sun Tzu, but less about actually waging war, but more about a leader and how the leader has the relationship. I would say that's where Machiavelli's is compared to Kama Sutra. The Kama Sutra is like make love, not war kind of thing. That's basically how I would just describe it. I think it's pretty fun. I read Machiavelli for college, for a college class, and that wasn't too bad. A lot of it, just like The Art of War and Kama Sutra, can be, applied to like real day, which I think is, pretty valid. I think even, criminal gangs use The Art of War to conduct their, organization, politics, and stuff, which is pretty interesting that these books can last this long and be used in such intricate and different ways. So, the Kama Sutra is pretty valid. Machiavelli and Art of War have their validities too. I hope to read those books here for the podcast at some point, give those some kind of, little spiel. I think they're pretty fun. And yeah, I think we're going to move on from the Kama Sutra here. I don't really want to delve too much into it. I think if you're interested in doing it, you're gonna read it. Um, I did want to talk about the Xbox Dev Direct. Now, I didn't look at the other two games, and to be honest, I'm not really going to for now. They didn't seem like my type of game. I saw bits of Asmongold watching them, but other than that, I'm not really, super interested in them. Ninja Gaiden's awesome. I've tried playing the ones a little bit ago. I think even for the podcast, maybe last year, just played the first one, Ninja Gaiden Black, and it's awesome that they're getting remakes and remasters. Really, really sick for them. I think it's Team Ninja, yeah, that's doing that. So it's great to see them. Team Ninja does Neo, I believe, and a few other host of games. But the big one that I want to talk about is Doom Dark Ages, because I'm a massive Doom fan. At least the newer Dooms. I did play the first Doom a few months ago here for the podcast, and that was pretty fun. But Doom 2016 was really enjoyable for me, and I fell in love with Eternal. I think Eternal's combat was so good, and what they said for the presentation was that while Doom was like just shooter based like action, and then the second game is like jumping kind of action. This game is all like about being super grounded and stuff, which is awesome. Seems pretty cool. You get a shield and a host of other melee weapons and even like guns and stuff. So I'm pretty hyped to play Doom Dark Ages. They have like a thing online where you can get a like a Steam creator code thing with some company. I'm gonna try and get onto that before the game comes out in March. Maybe get a free copy, which would be sick because these games are expensive. But I do plan on playing that like launch. That's definitely going to happen. In another bit of news, Final Fantasy VII has put out that they have completed story for part three, which is crazy because if you're caught up with Final Fantasy VII, they have things that aren't exactly super canonically true to the base game, like the original game. But I think if you're caught up now, you understand what's going on. And I think that's pretty interesting that they at least have the story wrapped up. And now they're probably super diving into the actual gameplay and building of the game now that they have the story built up, which is great. Always good to see. I'm excited to play it. I know that they're getting a version of Rebirth on the PC, so good for them. For the PC players being able to play Rebirth for the first time, that's awesome. They I also saw an article where they announced One Piece is getting Lego sets with like Netflix. I don't know if it's for like the Netflix show or maybe it's just One Piece in general, but I'm gonna keep an eye out for that. I don't know if they had pictures here in the article. I just saw the hat, but I hope they're not the live action show versions. I would prefer if they were just the anime version. I think people would prefer that too, but we'll see. And I want to talk about this because this is a strange time for us because I'm a Konami fan. I don't necessarily hate Konami. I think they fumble the ball, but at least they can still do some decisions that I think are pretty good, and that's putting out bundles of Yu-Gi-Oh games. Now, I'm a massive Yu-Gi-Oh fan. I don't play much of like the more modern stuff now, but when it came to the video games, you can bet I was playing them as a child. I played a lot of the Game Boy games, so they're doing a re. I'm gonna say it's a remaster. I don't think they're remastering the games, but I think it's just a collection It's the Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days collection, and it collects about 14 or so Yu-Gi-Oh! Titles, all the way from like 1998 to 2005, I believe, and that's pretty awesome. They even have the Yu-Gi-Oh! Dungeon Dice Monsters game, which I didn't play that one. I played whatever was the PS2 version of Dungeon Dice Monsters. Maybe that's the same, like remaster version or port version of it, but I can't be certain. This is a W for Konami, I will say, because I think putting out classic bundles like this is the way to go. And I don't know what they're charging for it or what it's going to be on. I imagine it'll be on Game Pass. I'm pretty excited for it. Maybe it'd be on Switch. That's awesome. Steam, of course. So I think it should be really exciting. I love the Yu-Gi-Oh games. The newer ones are awesome. Just being able to play a game, experience the new Yu-Gi-Oh mechanics all in one go without having to pay money for the cards and all that kind of stuff. That's why I like the video games for these card games and all this other kind of stuff. It's just an alternative for fans to get into these games. I would prefer people have as much opportunity to experience these things as much as possible. Hopefully, we get a whole bunch of other bundles like this in the future for arcade games or Game Boy games, retro games, anything like that. Konami, I think, has a pretty vast like catalog of games that they could be pumping out here. So that's awesome to see Yu-Gi-Oh getting some love here. And before we get into what I was playing, I got some Pokemon cards. We got Drampa and Charizard from the Pokemon McDonald's event, which is pretty awesome. I'm pretty excited about that. I got some two other cards, but I don't remember what they were. They're like psychic types. I'm always like bad with these names, but I'm a big fan of Pokemon, and it's just fun to be experiencing the cards again. Now that I'm not a big fan of the Pokemon games, I only really prefer like playing the emulators on my phone. I also got a chance to play the Stanley Parable again. I went and did the deluxe edition. I showed it off to Hannah, and it was pretty fun experiencing Stanley Parable again. I never did the deluxe edition with the fun little DLC stuff, but it was pretty cool seeing that they just pretty much made it like, oh, we don't want to make a DLC. We just want to, you know, we don't want to make a sequel. Maybe make us a new game. And having the Steam reviews inside the game was pretty fun. Stanley Parable is one of those like wall breaking games to a way. It's like, you're playing a video game, like the main character figures out you're, being controlled and that kind of stuff. Not to really give spoilers, but it's definitely that kind of weird vibe. Um, it's a really quick game, it has multiple endings, so you can blast through it in definitely a day, depending on the endings that you choose at first. But once you figure out like the loop of the game, you can rush through more of the endings as far as I know. I haven't looked up all of the endings. I refuse to do that. I'd rather be like surprised maybe next time I do the game. Maybe there's like an actual way to get all the collectibles. I'm not really gonna look that up, but maybe there is. Um, Monster Hunter Rise, right? We're a little bit there. I haven't gotten into the DLC yet. Sunrise, I'm pretty annoyed by that, but eventually we will, and maybe we'll do World, right? Because Wilds comes out soon. Um, Black Myth Wukong is bugged out for me, and I'm so mad because I'm on the Monkey King shell fight. Then phase two is so annoying, and I don't have the fourth focal point. I don't know what happened to it. I respected it, and now I don't have access to the fourth focal point. I don't know what I did, and it's really annoying. So I haven't really played Wukong in a while. I did play some time into Disco Elysium, right? And I played this game maybe 2023 is what the last file save said. So maybe around then for the podcast, whatever we were talking about that. Disco Elysium is like a game where you forget that you're a cop. Your character wakes up with amnesia and you start doing cop activities while you forget you're a cop, but you also have like voices in your head. It's kind of like a text RPG, or like a ARPG or whatever you would also call Baldur's Gate. It's like a very choice heavy game. Your choices have like dice rolls that affect like with your stacks and stuff. So I forget what the genre of the game that is. Like RPG, I suppose. You don't really make a character in the beginning. You just kind of start one. You can choose some stuff in the beginning, but it's not like the same. The game is fun. The game is fun. I definitely find myself having a hard time finding where to go with the list. Like my tasks are building up, the side quests, but we did get to a new area. We're on day three. Went across the river, so we're exploring the areas with the church and the hobo people and the music people and whatever's over there. Found my car, right? You find out you're like a drunk person and uh, you know, like you're a known drunk on like the police force. So it's crazy. This game is very odd. I would love to maybe watch a speed run of it in the future or like a full playthrough of someone else playing it in like cohesion. But I like it. It's definitely a game that reminds me. Well, I'll compare it to Refantasio. I think um the scope of those games, the general like ideas and the themes of those games are so similar. Disco Elysium and ReFantazio are just so like they're one to one, other than like just being different, like a detective game versus like a fantasy RPG, right? I think that these are two very similar themed games with their world buildings and their ideas, but their gameplay is probably a little different, which is, fine. I think if you're a big fan of ReFantazio, or you should play um, Disco Elysium. If you're a fan of Disco Elysium, play ReFantazio. They're very two similar style games. I think they're awesome. I'm loving to see where the ending would go. I'm gonna talk about it more. I'm doing the Disco Elysium, the final cut version. I don't remember what's particularly new to the version or whatever it said at the time, but I'm loving this game so far. It's pretty cool. And, we talked about what I read a little bit, right? We read the Kama Sutra, but I'm obviously reading a whole bunch of series in comics and manga. Right now, we're doing Absolute Wonder Woman #4, and that was a blast, right? She killed the Tetracide with her giant sword. Like, what else can I say about that? That's so, so sick. So, Absolute Wonder Woman is becoming my favorite just comic series currently. I just think it's so fun. It's definitely a cooler twist of Wonder Woman than I've ever seen. And I'm really digging it. It's really enjoyable. There's a Power Rangers comic that seems pretty cool that I might read in the future, and a Cult of Lamb one that I haven't given a shot yet. It's like has like one issue. They have like a digital version of a comic there, but I don't know if it's the same one. I'll just have to check. But other than that, we've been reading manga, right? It's still the year of manga, but not really. There's just so many manga still going on that I feel like we'll just never be done with the year of manga. It's just going to be the era of manga until maybe there's a time where I just really don't find anything interesting anymore. But right now, right, we're doing Baki. I'm on chapter 162. I'm not too far along compared to where we, last talked, had the last episode, but it's definitely kicking up. So Baki's just gearing up for his fight with his dad, Yujiro Hanma, which I don't even know what's going to happen there. So he's like training in the airfield right now. That's basically what it is. And Baki's mom sucks, dude. His mom's terrible. And I'm hoping if Baki wins this fight, I'm hoping that he wins over his father or something happens. I imagine the fight will be delayed. That's my guess, is the fight will be delayed. We just had One Piece 1187. In this chapter, we find out that, Shanks is not on the island, and it's someone named Figurlin Shamrock, who's with Gunko. These are the Holy Knights, and they're trying to recruit Loki. Loki apparently killed the last Giant King, which is wild, right? We're finding some pretty big revelations here. And I don't know what's gonna happen because I thought that was Shanks. I for real thought that was Shanks. I don't know what I was thinking. But yeah, it was Figurlin Shamrock, who's like the son of someone else, the fifth dude somewhere. Um, yeah, I don't know. One Piece has just been pretty wild lately, and I really don't know what to think about the giant island stuff because now that we're on Elbaf, things feel like there's a lot of things that are probably gonna be revealed here because a lot was revealed at Egghead, right? Egg had a lot of stuff doing with the Lost Era, right? And this might be something else. There's a lot of mysteries involving the giants, which is gonna be crazy. And Berserker's gonna come back on Valentine's Day, which I'm so hyped for. I think it's like 379 or 389 or something. And Wild Strawberry is also still on hiatus. That's very unfortunate. And then we had Dragon Ball Daima episode 15. This involved the Evil Eye a little more, which I'm not a big fan of. This is just some lame plot device, which doesn't really matter. It's weird how they used it and put it there. It's definitely kind of like winding down now, so probably getting to the last 4 episodes. It's probably gonna be all action here on out, hopefully. And yeah, we had the Sparking Zero DLC, right? Which was crazy. I tried out a little bit of that. We got to try out Beast Gohan, Orange Piccolo, the Gamma 1 and 2s, and Cell Max. Oh my God, my favorite. So that was all great. I wish there was a little more with the content, maybe like just a Gohan version of the story, the same with it just in the base game, and you just do the Gohan version of it, or maybe just even Gohan and Piccolo alternating. And I don't know, I feel like just adding the characters is kind of not the best for people who like bought it individually or separately. I got it with the Ultimate Edition. So I don't know. I would feel a little gypped if I paid, what is it, like maybe 15, $20. And that's, I would not really like that. Alien Earth teaser is coming out pretty soon. Like the show is coming out. We just saw a little teaser for it. I'm, hopeful for it. I love Alien. I'm just really, hoping that it's gonna be a good TV show rather than like just, Slock. And yeah, I think that's going to be basically it for this special, nice episode of the podcast. Yeah, I just don't know what else to say about, us being here on episode 69. It's funny, it's crazy. It's just another week, you know and I hope to do fun, wacky, weird stuff like that coming up later in the future. Maybe like episode 111, we'll do like a Fallout 4 themed one or something along those lines, or 666, we'll do like the Satanic Bible, right? I have a version of that. I just think it'd be fun to, you know, talk about, these fun things, experience these fun things, whether it's in like print book form, comic book illustration form. Audiobook's still pretty cool. Video games, like movies, TV shows, all of them. I just think they're fun to talk about. Even just going to museums and experiencing the world. I think all that's pretty fun. And I'm definitely looking forward to the video game news that's coming out between now and, forever, of course. But we're in the era now of video game announcements. So Xbox put out their direct, which means that everything's like it's game now. We're gonna have announcements. Probably not so much, in February with all these other games coming out, but I don't know when other game conferences coming out. I'm gonna try and be more up with these game conferences. Maybe try to watch them live or do something. I work full time, which is pretty bad. But yeah, other than that, I will see you guys for episode 70 on next Monday. You guys stay safe out there, and I'll see you next week.